The officer thought he'd caught another easy target, just a black woman he could intimidate and laugh off the road. He didn't know that behind the calm eyes and steady hands was an FBI badge powerful enough to destroy his career in minutes. When he pulled his gun and mocked her credentials, he thought he owned the moment. But exactly 120 seconds later, as federal agents surrounded him and snapped cold steel cuffs around his wrists, he learned a hard truth. You can laugh at a badge, but you can't outrun justice. It was supposed to be an ordinary Tuesday afternoon in Montgomery County, Maryland, the kind where people rush home from work, school zones start blinking yellow, and police cruisers scatter across quiet neighborhoods. For Agent Marissa Clark, though, it was anything but ordinary. She had spent the day deep in a federal investigation, chasing a complex financial crime ring tied to interstate smuggling. Her badge, the unmistakable gold-plated shield of the FBI, sat neatly tucked into her inner coat pocket next to the official documents she just picked up from headquarters. Marissa was no stranger to pressure. As a black woman in federal law enforcement, she'd spent the better part of 12 years proving herself in rooms where she was often the only one who looked like her. Her calm demeanor, sharp instincts, and flawless track record had earned her the nickname the Anchor among her peers. But today, as she merged onto Riverdale Parkway, a patrol car slipped behind her, its red and blue lights flashing suddenly and aggressively. Inside that patrol car sat Officer Brian Kerner, a 6-year veteran of the local sheriff's department with a history that many of his colleagues whispered about but few confronted. Brian had a reputation, not for bravery or community service, but for pulling over black drivers with a heavy hand and an arrogant grin. Internal complaints had piled up over the years, but none had stuck. His confidence had grown into cockiness, and cockiness into carelessness. When he saw Marissa's black SUV and the professional attire she wore, something in him twitched. "Time for a little checkup," he mumbled, flipping on the sirens. Marissa, seasoned and composed, pulled to the side calmly, her window lowered as she retrieved her badge and driver's license, prepared, as always, to announce her federal credentials in case this was a routine misunderstanding. But as Officer Kerner approached her window, something was different. His hand didn't rest casually on his belt, the way most cautious officers approach a stop. No, his fingers hovered over his holstered pistol license and registration. He barked, eyes narrowing as they scanned her brown skin and sharp jawline. Before Marissa could respond fully, she politely introduced herself. "Agent Clark, FBI. I'm armed and carrying official documents. My badge is right here." She extended her credentials with slow, precise movements, the way all federal agents are trained to do. But instead of stepping back or verifying her badge, Officer Kerner's lips curled into a smirk. "FBI," he scoffed, loud enough for passing cars to hear. He glanced down at her badge and let out a dry laugh. "Lady, you can buy one of these on eBay." His hand jerked, and before she could blink, he'd unholstered his pistol, aiming it squarely at her chest. To him, it was a game. Another driver to humble, another badge to belittle. But what Officer Kerner didn't know was that Marissa's dashboard camera had already started recording, and her discreet emergency transmitter, linked directly to the FBI field office just 7 miles away, had silently activated the moment he'd pulled his gun. The next 2 minutes, they would change everything. For a moment, the world around Marissa Clark seemed to slow into sharp focus, like the stillness before a storm hits. The cold barrel of Officer Kerner's pistol gleamed under the afternoon sun, unblinking and unwavering as it pointed directly at her heart. Pedestrians on the far sidewalk paused, unsure of what they were witnessing. A few drivers slowed down as they passed, their eyes flicking toward the standoff but quickly moving on, unwilling to get involved. Yet Marissa, steady as ever, kept her breathing controlled and her eyes locked firmly on Kerner's face. "Sir," she said clearly, her voice calm but unmistakably commanding. "I've identified myself as a federal agent. You're aiming a firearm at a credentialed officer of the United States government. Lower your weapon." Her words, backed by years of tactical training, were sharp enough to cut through tension. But Kerner wasn't listening. His smirk only deepened. "Oh, I bet you say that to all the cops who catch you speeding," he sneered. His finger inched closer to the trigger, not fully pressing, but just enough to send a chill through anyone trained to recognize danger. He waved her FBI badge mockingly in his free hand, tossing it onto the dashboard like a cheap trinket. His mind wasn't on protocol, it was on dominance. What Kerner failed to notice, however, was the tiny flashing blue light of Marissa's watch. A silent distress beacon linked directly to the FBI's rapid response unit, triggered the moment her dashboard cam detected a drawn weapon during an official interaction. The signal had already pinged Special Agent Warren Hughes, her direct supervisor. 7 miles away in the FBI field office, Hughes's computer flashed red. The alert's message was chillingly simple. "Agent Clark, weapon drawn, need assistance, location locked." Within seconds, Hughes and two other agents leapt from their desks. He knew Marissa's character too well to second-guess her signal. "Mobilize backup. We're rolling out now," he ordered sharply. Unmarked black SUVs peeled out of the parking garage within minutes, tires screeching as they carved through midday traffic toward her GPS location. Back at the scene, Marissa remained still, both palms open on the steering wheel. Years of training had taught her not to make sudden moves. Her heartbeat was steady, her mind laser-focused. But beneath her calm surface, she knew time was critical. The weapon pointed at her wasn't just a threat to her body. It was a test of her composure, her power, and everything she had worked for in an institution where black women were rarely seen in such authority. Kerner chuckled under his breath, almost to himself. "You feds think you're above the law, huh?" But his arrogance blinded him to what was happening around him. 2 blocks away, the low hum of approaching federal sirens, different from local police tones, had already begun to echo through the streets. Civilians were starting to pull out their phones. A bystander across the street had begun live-streaming the encounter. The comments were flooding in. "He's pointing a gun at a Fed? Somebody tag the news, this is crazy. That's an FBI badge on her dash." Kerner, oblivious to the growing storm, pressed on. "Step out of the vehicle, now." Marissa's lips parted ever so slightly. She knew that if she moved wrong, he might shoot. If she resisted, he'd escalate. But if she stalled just long enough, the cavalry would arrive. And Kerner, he wouldn't see it coming. The distant hum grew louder, deep, unwavering, and unmistakably federal. It was a sound that didn't just announce arrival, it warned of it. Officer Kerner, still too drunk on his own authority, didn't flinch. His eyes were locked on Marissa Clark, who remained motionless, her fingers never leaving the steering wheel. But something shifted in the air. Passers-by began backing away from the street. A silver-haired man holding a bag of groceries whispered, "That's not local PD, that's FBI." In less than 30 seconds, 3 black Suburbans cornered the block, 2 cutting off Kerner's cruiser from behind, and the third pulling alongside Marissa's car. Before Kerner could even process what was happening, 4 agents in tactical vests poured out, each one marked clearly with bold yellow FBI insignias. Leading them was Special Agent Warren Hughes, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that could freeze fire. He didn't draw his weapon, not yet. He didn't have to. His presence alone shifted the entire gravity of the situation. "Agent Clark," Hughes's voice boomed across the street, clipped but commanding. "Are you safe?" Without removing her eyes from Kerner, Marissa replied steadily, "Yes, sir." The officer has drawn a weapon on a federal agent despite clear identification. That was all Hughes needed. He advanced, slow and deliberate, every step cutting into Kerner's false sense of control. "Officer," Hughes called out crisply, flashing his own badge. "I'm Special Agent Warren Hughes, FBI. Lower your weapon immediately." Kerner's brow furrowed, confusion finally cracking through his arrogance. His gaze darted between Hughes, the encircling SUVs, and the growing crowd now filming openly. His lips parted, but no words came out. "You're currently threatening a federal officer under color of law," Hughes continued, his voice icy and sharp as glass. "Failure to comply will result in immediate detainment under Title 18, Section 242 of the U.S. Code." That line, the exact statute about deprivation of rights under color of law, hit Kerner like a slap. His smirk faltered. His hand, once rock steady on the pistol, began to tremble slightly. He took a step back, as if realizing, maybe for the first time, that he was no longer in control. But it was already too late. From behind, one of Hughes's agents approached swiftly, disarming Kerner with a practiced move that left no room for resistance. The gun clattered harmlessly onto the asphalt. "Officer Kerner, you are under arrest," Hughes stated flatly, snapping handcuffs onto Kerner's wrists with a sharp click. "For assaulting a federal officer, obstruction of justice, and unlawful threat with a deadly weapon." The street fell silent, save for the constant whir of smartphones capturing every second. Kerner, now pale and wide-eyed, tried sputtering. Wait, I didn't know. I thought—" "You didn't think at all," Hughes cut him off coldly, before turning his back to the disgraced officer. He walked straight to Marissa's window, his voice softening only slightly. "You handled that with more restraint than most. Are you hurt?" Marissa gave a small nod. "I'm fine, sir." Behind them, Kerner sat slumped on the curb, his badge removed, his wrist cuffed tightly. The live stream was still rolling, and across the nation, viewers were already sharing and commenting on the footage. The tables hadn't just turned. They had flipped so hard the entire game had changed. By sunrise the next morning, what had started as a quiet traffic stop in suburban Atlanta had exploded into a national firestorm. The video of Officer Kerner's smirk, that twisted, haunting smile as he pointed a gun at Marissa Clark's head, had already gone viral on every major platform. The headline on one popular stream screamed, "Cop pulls gun on black FBI agent, ends up in cuffs himself." News anchors scrambled for exclusive interviews. Legal analysts dissected every frame of the footage. Civil rights attorneys quoted precedent after precedent about law enforcement overreach and racial bias. But it wasn't just the media machine spinning, it was the people. Under the hashtag #BadgeNotBullet, thousands of Black Americans, activists, and allies shared their own stories of racial profiling, wrongful stops, and police intimidation. Marissa Clark's calm defiance had become a symbol, not just of one woman's courage, but of decades of frustration boiling over into a singular, undeniable moment of justice. Outside of Atlanta's 12th precinct, a crowd began to gather. Placards waved in the warm southern wind. "Your bias showed, her badge shined. Respect Black professionals, or be held accountable." How many more Marissas? Inside the precinct, Special Agent Warren Hughes sat beside Marissa at a long oak conference table. His face, normally impassive, carried a trace of something deeper today, pride mixed with exhaustion. "You okay to go public with this?" he asked quietly, sliding over a folder marked Press Release, Internal Affairs. Marissa exhaled slowly. "I don't think I have a choice, sir." Her gaze hardened with purpose. "If it was just me, maybe I'd let it pass. But how many others don't have an FBI badge to flash? How many of us have no backup arriving in Black Suburbans?" Hughes gave a slow, approving nod. "Then we do it right. Transparent, factual, and loud. By afternoon, the FBI press office had officially confirmed the incident, stating that Officer Kerner had unlawfully threatened a federal agent, was taken into custody, and had been immediately suspended from the Atlanta PD pending federal charges. Social media erupted even further. A short clip of Marissa standing before microphones, her voice steady but filled with quiet fire, spread like wildfire. I am a black woman. I am an FBI agent. And yesterday, both of those truths collided in a way that could have cost me my life. Not because of my actions, but because of his assumptions. I'm alive today because I had power behind me. But justice should not depend on badges or backup. It should depend on truth. By midnight, even the White House had issued a statement condemning the officer's actions and praising Marissa's professionalism. The nation wasn't just watching anymore. It was demanding change. And Officer Kerner? His name was etched permanently into the annals of disgrace. His mugshot, freshly uploaded, showed none of the cocky smirk he'd worn the day before. Only shock, only regret. For the first time, perhaps, he realized what it meant to be on the other side of the badge. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity. Journalists elbowed for space. Activists, lawyers, off-duty agents, and everyday citizens filled the benches, their eyes sharp with expectation. This wasn't just State of Georgia versus Officer Kerner. This was America versus a broken system. Marissa Clark sat poised at the witness stand. Her FBI-issued navy blazer looked freshly pressed, but her voice, when she spoke, carried the weight of generations. Under the soft hum of ceiling fans, she recounted every second of that harrowing afternoon. I rolled my window down. I informed him, clearly, that I was a federal agent and that I was armed, lawfully. His eyes narrowed. His voice rose. And when I moved to retrieve my badge, as protocol dictates, he drew his weapon on me. Did you feel your life was in danger? The prosecutor asked. Marissa's gaze didn't waver. I knew my life was in danger. Across the room, Officer Kerner sat pale and rigid behind his defense table. Gone was the uniform, the badge, the gun belt that had given him swagger. Instead, his tailored suit seemed ill-fitting, almost as if it sagged under the weight of accountability. His attorney tried to spin a narrative of reasonable suspicion and officer safety, painting Kerner as an overworked officer reacting to incomplete information. But the evidence was damning. Dash cam footage, cell phone videos from bystanders, and the sharp, unwavering testimonies from FBI supervisors gutted any hope of sympathy. In a particularly devastating cross-examination, prosecutor Lena Morales asked Kerner bluntly, Mr. Kerner, can you explain why you smirked while pointing your gun at a woman who had identified herself as federal law enforcement? The courtroom fell into a dense silence. His throat bobbed. I didn't realize. I didn't mean. You didn't realize she was black? You didn't realize she was holding an FBI badge? He shrank under the glare of hundreds of staring eyes. No further questions. Outside those courtroom walls, America was splitting wide open. On talk shows, panelists debated what Marissa's case meant for broader conversations about race and policing. Some called her a hero who broke the stereotype. Others warned that this was a rare exception, and millions of others without her credentials still face similar dangers daily. Even within law enforcement circles, murmurs of discomfort rose. For Black officers and agents, Marissa's story was an uncomfortable reminder of their double burden. Serving a country that still doubts your right to stand tall in uniform. After 6 tense days, the jury delivered their verdict. Guilty on 3 counts, aggravated assault under color of law, obstruction of federal duty, and unlawful use of a firearm. When the foreman read the verdict, Marissa sat perfectly still. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. Instead, she closed her eyes, as if releasing something long held in her chest. Officer Kerner's sentencing would come weeks later, but in that moment, something larger had already happened. A precedent had been set. A line had been drawn, and for once, justice hadn't knocked politely. It had kicked the door wide open. The sound of the gavel reverberated long after the courtroom doors closed. But outside, the echoes of justice continued to ripple through the streets, through the media, and through the hearts of those who had been holding their breath, hoping for something bigger than just a legal victory. Marissa Clark's fight wasn't just her own. It was one shared by countless others who had been silenced by a system that, at best, dismissed them, and at worst, put their lives in danger because of their race. In the weeks that followed the conviction, Marissa became a symbol of resilience. She was invited to speak at rallies, on podcasts, and in interviews across the country. People from all walks of life, from civil rights activists to everyday citizens, rallied behind her, lifting her up as a beacon of change. But even amidst the outpouring of support, Marissa remained grounded in the same quiet determination that had carried her through that fateful encounter with Officer Kerner. But Marissa's life had been forever altered. She had been thrust into the limelight, her story being dissected in every corner of the media. In some ways, it felt as though her very identity had become a cause. Though proud of her role in bringing justice to the surface, she couldn't ignore the emotional toll it had taken. Each interview, each rally, felt like reopening a wound she'd only just begun to heal. Her family, too, bore the weight of her decision to speak out. While they were proud of her courage, they were also afraid. What would happen next? Would this become the new norm? Or would Marissa become another statistic, another casualty of a system that didn't want to change? Yet beyond the personal cost, something shifted in the national conversation. The country was faced with uncomfortable questions. The case wasn't just about one officer and one woman. It was about a system that failed to protect its most vulnerable members. Black women in particular have long been subjected to a unique blend of oppression, one that goes unnoticed by many until it is forced into the open. As Marissa's case gained traction, voices from all parts of society began to demand accountability. Legal experts, activists, and even members of law enforcement discussed the inherent biases within policing and the justice system. They debated the over-policing of communities of color and questioned how much longer they would be asked to accept the disproportionate treatment. While the debate raged on, Marissa remained focused. She hadn't spoken out to start a conversation. She had spoken out to change the course of that conversation. The road ahead. The story of Marissa Clark wasn't just about a single victory in a courtroom. It was about breaking a cycle. It was about demanding that Black women be seen for who they are, not as targets, not as suspects, but as individuals entitled to the same protection and respect as anyone else. And so, as she stood before the crowd at the rally to celebrate the win, Marissa's words rang clear. This fight isn't over, it's just begun. We have a long road ahead, and each of us has a part to play. The call to action was simple yet powerful. Stand up, speak out, and never stop fighting for justice. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Marissa Clark had set something in motion that could not be undone. The ripples of her courage were already spreading, urging others to rise, speak, and demand a world where justice didn't depend on the color of your skin. Deep, reflective question: how can we, as a society, ensure that justice is truly blind to race and bias, and that stories like Marissa's are no longer the exception, but the rule? If you believe in the importance of real change, leave your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe to the Arc of Stories for more powerful narratives that matter.